The very first video that was published on our channel was to check out a game on Kickstarter called Citizens of Earth. The game had failed to reach its Kickstarter goal, but it was picked up by the publisher Atlas. With Citizens of Earth now out, did the game deserve to be saved, or has it fallen short? Citizens of Earth is an RPG with a very simple story. Strange evil occurrences are happening around the world, and as Vice President of the world, it is your civic duty to find out what's going on and put an end to it.
You say it's of the utmost urgency, and I alone can save the day?
The story has a very Earthbound feel, but it just misses the mark. It isn't special, and at times it feels it just drags on to make the game a little longer. It's by no means bad. The ending itself was actually pretty satisfying, and there are a few times when the narration picks up and catches your interest. But at the same time, you probably won't find yourself heavily invested in the game, that you'll play it in one sitting or pick it up after you finish it. Throughout the game, the story tries to have a comedic approach with its delivery, but it's usually hit or miss. The game mostly relies on puns, witty references, and character-based humor. The puns are most noticeable with enemy names and their descriptions. They are funny at first, but due to their excessive use, they just become tiresome. Meanwhile, the witty references are not as overly used and are sort of well hidden throughout the story. Catching one of these references can not only put a smile on your face, but you may find yourself laughing at it. The character-based humor, however, is probably the weakest out of all of them. The only character that really shines in this is the Vice President himself. The other characters are a little generic and have no real personality to play off. You most likely won't remember a character based off their personality or dialogue, but instead on how to use them in battle. The Vice President can't fight evil alone, nor does he actually fight. Instead, he recruits citizens to fight for him. Almost every character you come across can be recruited through a side quest. These side quests range from fighting a boss, to fetch quests, to completing a minigame. Overall, they're not very memorable and they tend to be tedious to say the least. You only require a few characters to complete the game's story. Due to the way I played, I found myself forced to play through every character for the sole purpose of recruiting one character. They required all citizens that you have recruited to be level 20 in order for them to join your party. I would recommend once you find a party configuration that you enjoy, finish the game with them. The combat of Citizens of Earth is played out in a standard turn-based battle system with a slight twist. There is no real basic attack. Instead, characters use special abilities to attack. Whenever an ability is used, a character will either gain or use energy. Abilities that gain energy are typically weaker than ones that use energy. They can do a few points of damage to an enemy, give a small buff to another party member, or even heal a small percentage of their health. Abilities that use energy generally have a stronger effect. All of the characters have different abilities, granting a variety of customization in your party. Each character's abilities also reference their occupation, which is a nice touch. For instance, the farmer can plant and grow crops that can deal massive damage. The soda bartender has abilities that can buff other party members, though once they wear off, you'll find some negative status effects have taken their place. Some characters' abilities can also cause elemental damage, such as the fireman who can hose enemies down with a ton of water elemental damage. Hitting an enemy weak to an elemental ability will gain the attacking character an advantage, which in turn gains a little bit of energy. The only other time you can get an advantage is in the overworld. Enemies wander in the overworld, and if you come into contact with one, you will enter battle. Surprising one of the enemies with an attack from behind will grant you an advantage. But if the enemy attacks your party from behind, you'll find yourself at a disadvantage, losing a bit of energy. Getting an advantage can help turn the tide of battle, but it is difficult to do so. The enemies don't aimlessly wander on the screen, instead they make an effort to come into contact with your party, no matter what level you are. This turns the high encounter rate into needless padding that makes the game boring and tiresome. This is also due to the bland overworld that is basically covered in enemies and nothing else. The world itself isn't too big. With most characters being recruitable, you'll be traveling around the world seeing the same people repeatedly. Once they've been recruited, there's almost no reason to talk to them. Some characters run stores where you can get specialty equipment and healing items, but they're only available at their shops. All the stores are located in one town, so expect a little bit of backtracking. However, you do get plenty of useful items from defeating enemies or just finding them on the ground. At first, a store's stock is pretty limited, but by playing with the shop owner, you unlock more items through talent experience. All characters have a certain talent they can use out of battle. As you play with the character, they will gain battle and talent experience. A handful of characters will already have their talent maxed out when they are recruited, but others will need to be leveled up. Leveling them up increase their effectiveness, whether it being get new equipment in shops or just get past some more difficult obstacles. Some talents are useful, such as the use of the car salesman's car to help you travel across the world a little quicker, while others will only be used a few times. For example, you only use the bodybuilder's talent of strength when you need to reveal an entrance to an area where you could find some loot. The presentation of Citizens of Earth is actually one of its strongest points. The entire game has a comic strip appeal or cartoony look, from thick outlines on the characters to vibrant colors that you don't usually see in games nowadays. It's a refreshing sight to see. There are also some noticeable little touches that are just wonderful, such as when the programmer attacks with the ability binary code, the damage is actually shown in binary. While the music itself isn't memorable, it works for the situations the characters find themselves in. Citizens of Earth is a game that is playable, and that's about it. Everything to make a good game is there, but it's just not well executed. The game also has some obvious bugs and glitches. There was a constant amount of crashes while playing in the overworld, and it even occurred at the climax of the story, which killed some of the enjoyment. Thankfully, the developers are actively talking with the community to locate issues, and are getting a patch out as soon as they can. If you're a fan of Earthbound or RPGs that are similar in that nature, I suggest taking a look at it. Otherwise, this probably isn't the game for you. For now, Citizens of Earth gets a 6 out of 10. Once the game gets patched, consider it a 7 out of 10.
This is way too much for my mind to handle.